We're starting. Okay, this week on Quality Digest Live, we chat with Keith Bevan of the Coordinate Metrology Society about CMSC 2017 coming up.
That's right. Plus, observational lessons from the traveling Ono Circle. That and more when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for June 30th, 2017. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest publisher, Mike Richmond. Well, I'm going to tackle this first story because, obviously I'm the technical expert, the guy with the background in engineering, science, all that kind of great stuff.
And spelling, obviously.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So, Dirk, you may have to help me out on this one. Well, here's something that most of us don't think about very often, space junk. But for engineers at NASA or the Department of Defense, the hundreds of millions, I can't believe it's that number, but that's quoted in the story, hundreds of millions of individual pieces of garbage currently orbiting our planet are a real problem that poses a real threat. After all, orbital speeds of up to 17,500 miles per hour, orbital speeds of that garbage, even something as small as a pebble could possibly destroy a passing spacecraft. Well, that's the premise behind the article, Space Junk, the Cluttered Frontier, from the MIT News website. We linked out to it in Wednesday's issue of the Quality Digest newsletter. Well, the issue here is that not all space junk is created equal. Some, like bare metal, for instance, pose a greater threat than, say, something with a painted or a coated surface, which might be something softer, not quite as hard as firm hard metal. Well, to tell the difference between the two and to guide spacecraft appropriately, Kerry Cahoy, who is a professor of aeronautics and astronautics at MIT, along with graduate student Mike Pasquale, developed a sensing technique called laser polarimetry. Did you ever hear of laser polarimetry?
No, I have not.
Well, it's laser polarimetry. I guess that's a new technique that they developed. That's what it said in the story.
Lasers and it's got polarimetry attached.
Polarimetry, I did. That's what it's all about. Well, according to the article, and I quote, you see how I'm doing this, I'm quoting directly from the article as opposed to interpreting. The article quotes, the team's technique uses a laser to measure a material's effect on the polarization state of the light, which refers to the orientation of light's oscillating electrical field that reflects off of the material. For instance, when the sun's rays reflect off of a rubber ball, the incoming light's electric field may oscillate vertically, but contain properties of the ball's surface, such as its roughness, may cause it to reflect with a horizontal oscillation instead. Or a completely different orientation altogether. The same material can have multiple polarizing effects depending on the angle at which light hits it. In other words, a laser polarimeter here on Earth can detect surface features of the space junk, all of which have different polarization signatures. And in this way, scientists can interpret how much of a threat the junk in question may or may not pose. So they're trying to interpret what it is that's up there. They know that there's these millions and millions of things up there, some of which are really threatening, some of which maybe aren't as threatening, but they want to know which the ones are that are really dangerous and help NASA and the Department of Defense kind of work around those a little bit.
So that they can tell us before something hits us.
Hopefully,
junk
hopefully that's,
Sorry.
Hundreds of millions of pieces of space junk.
Well, most of it burns up when it enters the atmosphere.
But a lot of it is very little. But I mean, they're saying, these bare metal pieces, which could be fairly large, could pose a real threat. So they want to understand what those pieces are and try to obviously avoid them. Like it said in the article, they can kind of alert maybe the space station to, hey, there's a debris field coming your way.
Not so much for people on Earth, but up
there,
gotcha.
Or if there's maybe as a launch of some sort. I mean, you want to alert the people that are already up there, the equipment that's already up there, that, hey, there's a debris field and there's a lot of bare metal in it. Maybe there's some evasive procedures you could take to get the heck away from it. That was in that movie Space. Remember remember that movie with what's her name? Sandra
Bullock.
Sandra Bullock. And George Clooney. Space, wasn't that called Space?
Gravity.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew it was something like that. Yeah, there was a big debris field in there, and I remember watching that and thinking that's not really true. Well, it's really true. It's up there.
Yeah, it's gonna hurt if it hits you.
That's right, no doubt.
All right. So there are an estimated 700,000 people around the world who die annually from drug-resistant infections. Mm-hmm. And if the situation doesn't change, think scientists, it's estimated that such infections will kill maybe 10 million people per year by 2050. So medical scientists are always looking for ways to battle disease. and one of these things is not battling new diseases, is battling diseases that are now drug resistant, that weren't drug resistant before.
Right.
So one group of scientists is looking back in time. They think that it might hold some clues for future medications. And we say back in time, we mean medieval times. So for most of us, when we think about medieval times, we think about, a brutal life, cholera, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Game of Thrones. That's what we think about medieval times. It was rugged back then. It truly was. And we usually don't think of it as a time for scientific study or medical advances. And yet, as Erin Connolly writes in her article, Medieval Medicine Books Could Hold the Recipe for New Antibiotics, we shouldn't be too quick to dismiss all medieval apothecary as a mix, so to speak, of old wives' tale and superstition. As we have discovered with, let's say, ancient Eastern medicine, sometimes these old methods and concoctions actually do work. They actually provide cures. So Connolly is part of something called the Ancient Biotics team. It's a group of medievalists, microbiologists, medicinal chemists, parasitologists, pharmacists, and data scientists from universities and countries all over the world who believe that answers to today's antibiotic crisis might actually be found in medical history. So Connolly and her group are compiling this database of medieval medical recipes and testing them. And they hope that by revealing patterns in medieval medical practice, this database could inform future lab research about the materials used to treat infection in the past. And we can learn something from that. Now, the fascinating thing about this is they're testing these cures, and some of these cures so far actually work. For instance, I get styes fairly frequently. A lot of you probably do. They're annoying, right? They're painful and they're ugly. Well, a common cause of modern styes is something called the bacterium Staphylococcus aureus. One of these, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, sometimes referred to as MRSA, there you go, is resistant to many current antibiotics. So the ancient biotics team said, hey, they whipped up a batch of something called Bald's Eye Salve, an ancient recipe, medieval, that contains wine, good start, garlic, some sort of allium species like leek or onion, and ox gall. Something you can make soup out of that.
I was going to say, it's chicken marinade and eye salve all at once.
There you go. The recipe says that after the ingredients have been mixed together, they must stand in a brass vessel, for 9 nights. Not 7 or 8, but 9 before you use it. And it turned out it worked. It's a potent anti-staphylococcal agent which repeatedly killed established Staphylococcus aureus biofilms in an in vitro infection model, and it also killed MRSA in mouse chronic wound models. So the stuff worked on their testing. So why do we care about this? I mean, it is pretty interesting. I mean, medicine and ancient medicine are studying why it works, but why do we care? Well, what attracted us to this article, that even as quality professionals, and designers looking for the next innovation, we keep looking at the next big idea, and we keep thinking that new technology and new management techniques and new medical advances and so forth, they're the answer. And most of the time, look, let's face it, they are. I mean, there's always new technologies coming out that we can learn from, but sometimes, whether it's in management or product development or medicine, it might not hurt to look back, even way back, to see what others have done in the past and what has worked in the past. And in a way, if you think about it, for those of you familiar with TRIZ, T-R-I-Z, that's the Russian innovation technique, it's very similar to TRIZ. In essence, it's looking at past successes to see if there is a model or an overlap or some sort of direction that was taken back then that was successful, and how does it tie into what you're doing today? How does it tie into what you're trying to accomplish today? I thought it was a fascinating story with implications that reach into more than just medical research.
Yeah,
I mean, the reason for doing this is how did these guys come up with these concoctions? What was their, not only do these work, but how did they arrive at them? Was there a methodology that they used to come up with these solutions? And can we see from all these various solutions, the ones that work, is there something systematic? in the study that kept bringing them back to these solutions that work, and there's something that we can learn from that. So it's not just the medicine; it's the process that they went through.
Procedure.
Yeah, that hundreds of years old.
It's fascinating. I mean, think about it. I mean, a lot of, if you read about pharmaceutical development, there's really not a lot of energy devoted to antibiotics right now. And that's a problem because the antibiotics that a lot of doctors have in their toolkit are older, and there aren't a lot of new medicines that have been developed. I mean, there's not a lot of profit in antibiotics for pharmaceutical companies as opposed to like something important like Viagra or Rogaine. But I mean, it's true that they go where the money is.
Those two.
That's right. Bad results.
Bad results.
But I mean, it's important that there's a profit margin there. So I mean, this idea that you can look back on some cures that maybe are effective as antibiotics are really important, or antifungals. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for looking back from the far and as you say, just as an example for anything. For learning on anything. Yeah, it's good stuff there. Okay, thanks, Dirk. All right, well, so here we are in the summer, and that can only mean one thing. Well, actually, it only means two things. The first thing, which I almost forgot about, is that it gets kind of hot here in California, starting around now. I mean, today's a balmy 99 degrees, which is nice. Last week it was 112.
Oh, nice.
Here in Chico. Lovely. It's just lovely. I mean, the summer here in Northern California is great if you like being in air conditioning a lot. But the most important thing,
Arizona are saying whatever.
100, they had 121 the other day, I think. Crazy. All right, but the most important thing really, all kidding aside, that you got to know about the summer is that it kicks off dimensional metrology season. The key event, of course, is the Coordinate Metrology Society Conference, the CMSC. This year's conference, starting in less than 3 weeks now, is taking place at the striking Cliff Lodge in Snowbird, Utah, not far from Park City. The Coordinate Metrology Society is a gathering place for users, service providers, and manufacturers of close tolerance, large volume, and portable 3D measurement technology. This includes inspection software, CMMs, theodolites, laser projection systems, laser trackers, photogrammetry, scanners, articulated arms, and targets, to name just a few. A lot of stuff there. If you're in 3D portable metrology, you'll want to check that out. Well, the CMSC is a long-term Quality Digest partner, and we are of them as well. And Dirk and I will be reporting from the show next month. As always, there's sure to be a lot of interesting activity, including cutting-edge white paper presentations, personnel certification assessments, and an action-packed measurement and education zone right on the exhibit hall floor. In the middle of everything this year is going to be the Coordinate Metrology Society's executive chairperson, Keith Bevan. In addition to his role within the CMSC, Keith is also the interim group leader for training at the National Physical Laboratory in the United Kingdom. He joins us now via Skype for this month's CMSC Corner. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Mike. Hi, Dirk. How are you doing?
All right.
How are you, Keith? Well, thank you for joining us. Apologies for that long intro, but we'll get right into it now. The CMSC, it's a special event. We all know that. Dirk and I have been there many years. And you've been on the executive committee of the Coordinate Metrology Society for a few years, and you've been a familiar face of the conference for a lot of years in addition to that. So what would you say really kind of sets apart the CMSC from other technical conferences?
I think there's such a variety of things that people can do. I mean, you mentioned a great long list there in your introduction of all the different equipment, the people, and so on. But when you get the variation in the types of technical presentations, when you get a variety of things to do, you can learn such a lot. You can go back to fundamentals. You can learn very, very technical details. So it gives you a lot of benefits. And I believe that a lot of the delegates that can go back with and sort of brag that they've come back and there's a return on the investment from their business to say, hey, I've come back and learned a lot and can apply it back in the workplace.
Well, you've done a lot of great work on a personal level to bring the measurement zone and education zone to key areas of the CMSC conference, to bring those to the forefront of the conference. So what can we expect in the zones at CMSC 2017?
Well, this year it's slightly different. As always, we don't like to repeat each time, but we've got 3 specific areas in the measurement zone. We're going to be looking quite a bit at scanning, also looking at articulated arms and doing, like in a lot of cases, a lot of comparisons. So, for example, looking at optical CMM versus articulated arm. So there's going to be some nice little tests and techniques for people to do. Plus, we'll be back with the competition. looking at photogrammetry and lasers as well, laser trackers. So there is a lot to do in the measurement zone. In the education zone, we've got the Jeopardy back again that we did before the competition. We've got certification workshop on laser scanning. We've got the iPads doing the e-learning, that type of scenario. So there's lots and lots that's going to be going on for people to go away and learn.
So Keith, your background is in training. I know knowledge transfer is something that's near and dear to you as a metrology professional. So how did the measurement zone and the education zone, and really kind of the entire conference, really help those in industry learn and advance in their careers?
So what we've tried to do is to introduce all the core fundamental things that people need to know to be able to make a career out of metrology. So what are the fundamental bits you require, the core skills you need, how you can make step changes, how you can be given the right behaviors, how you can apply things like geometrical tolerancing using different types of measuring tools. You're taking people on a journey and setting them up for what I believe is a career for life. So it's fundamentally trying to give people this skill set and make a massive difference back in industry and get out there and shout about metrology, how important it is to us all.
And further to that, I mean, the next generation of metrology professionals, of course, it's a critical mission for the Coordinate Metrology Society. So how are you encouraging, first, STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math, and second, how do you connect those that are entering the workforce with those in the industry that have metrology jobs to fill?
So one of the things that is being worked on quite a lot across the world, really, but especially here in the UK, is there's a link between industry and with what their needs and requirements are for the future. So there's an introduction to apprenticeship schemes, professional recognition, so that you can actually develop this pathway right from school. So you need to come in with obviously English and maths, and then be able to move forward and then start to apply it through an apprenticeship scheme. And that also then gives people different options. Not everybody has the capability to go off to university and do a degree. They could be really good at getting on with their hands, using metrology equipment and making a massive difference. So there's a whole pathway that is reappearing in some instances and appearing as fresh in a different way. And industry is driving it. It's not academia that's driving it. Industry is driving it because it's for their needs.
Hey, Keith, kind of to follow up on that, just your perspective, you're in the UK, but you've been in the United States quite often. In the United States, apprenticeship programs a long time ago, that used to be like, I'm sure like they are in the UK, kind of a normal path. You would, if you were interested in something, you'd get an apprenticeship program for it, and eventually you'd graduate from that. And then apprenticeship programs kind of died off in the United States. The idea of a apprenticeship in whatever, except for very few cases, kind of went away, and now it's making a resurgence. Has that been the pattern in the UK as well, or has the UK always had a strong apprenticeship pathway?
It's been exactly the same. There has been there's a sort of group of, and I don't want to talk about the age, but there's an age group where the apprenticeship schemes are few and far between. Certain organisations kept apprenticeships going, but others didn't. And so there is such a focus now to bring that back, but to try and not make it generalised, but to make it focused. So although it's coming back in a big way, it's coming back in a very focused way. But it was exactly the same here, Dirk. Exactly the same.
Interesting.
Well, thanks, Keith Bevan. Good conversation with you as always. We'll see you at CMSC in just a few weeks there in Utah. Again, it's www.cmsc.org for anyone out there interested in checking out the CMSC. Still a little bit of time to come to the conference if you're interested, so check that one out. Keith, we're going to see you there in a couple of weeks, so thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm going to do a bit of space and gravity now.
I always got my pint at hand.
Cheers.
All right.
Cheers. Well, it's 7 o'clock. It's almost 7:30 there,
That's
so why
right.
not? All right, Keith.
You can do that.
We'll
Thank you,
see
guys.
soon.
In the evening, not in the morning, we should say
That's
so.
right.
All right, so long.
Bye.
All right. One of my favorite topics, the Ono circle.
Oh, no.
It's one of my favorite topics. For the uninitiated, if you aren't familiar with the Ono circle, it came about during the 1940s when Taiichi Ono of Toyota established the famous Toyota production system. Most of you are familiar with that. And one of his most famous exercises was this thing called the Ono circle. And what would happen is employees would be asked by Ono to stand inside a circle, either drawn with chalk or simply imagined, for hours, and simply observe a process until they found waste in it. And from there, they would seek to eliminate it. Now, this is just an observation exercise, pure and simple. Stand in one place for a long time and see what you soak up. And the idea is to get rid of preconceptions, presuppositions about what has been going on in a process, your presuppositions, and to just stand there and observe what is really going on. And if you've never done this, I suggest you try it. It is actually pretty amazing. Well, Christopher Martin, one of our account managers here at Quality Digest, he is a freelance journalist as well. I should also say he's a father of two, so he basically has no spare time. You know what that's about. But he did have enough time to write what I think is one of the more interesting takes on the Ono circle that I've seen in a long time, and Christopher calls it the traveling Ono circle. So most of us haven't been required to do an Ono circle exercise formally anyway, and we'll probably never formally do it unless your company is really into that. And yet, Christopher thinks you actually do the Ono circle all the time. Have you ever had to sit and wait in, let's say, a doctor's office? Did I mention Christopher has two young boys? Or in line at, I don't know, a Toys R Us or a GameStop. You get the idea. In those situations, have you found yourself thinking, if they would just do this or that, this line would move a lot quicker, right?
Right.
We've all done that.
Right.
That's an Ono circle. And you've brought it with you, right? You took it with you when you were there. Sure, you aren't looking at your process, you're looking at someone else's process, but that's okay. You're honing your observational skills, and that's always a good thing. This is an Ono circle that you do wherever you go. And by the way, you don't just sit there and try to spot the waste. Can you think of ways to eliminate the waste? I know we've done that as well. If you were in charge, what might you do? So think about it and come up with a solution. And it's not as if you're not doing anything else, right? You're sitting there waiting, might as well solve the problems for them. So you might wonder, why should you do that? It's not as it's not as if you're going to go to them, go to the manager of the store and say, oh, by the way, you're doing this all wrong and I've got a solution for you, not unless you want to find yourself out on the street. You keep all that to yourself. The reason to do this is just to learn. First, you're practicing your observation skills. And second, there is no such thing as a unique process. All processes have elements that are in common with other processes. There's only so many ways to do something. And it doesn't matter what you're doing, no matter where you do it, there's similarities in processes. So waste that you might spot in, say, an urgent care waiting room might have some overlap with waste in a call center. It is very possible that while you're doing your traveling Ono circle at, Home Depot or Lowe's or your favorite supermarket, you might find some wasteful action that is similar to what you do at your business. And so you might learn something that you can apply in your business by doing an Ono circle somewhere else. And the solution, is something that you might just be able to integrate into what you're doing. Now, I said up front that Christopher's idea was pretty unique. Well, it turns out that others have thought about this. When Christopher put out his article, one of the readers left us this comment, which I thought was really interesting. This reader writes, "Great concept. Nearing the end of our lean training, we would send participants to lunch in a food court environment to observe two pre-selected outlets with and without attention to waste, obtain some performance data at a distance, and study what in their operations accounted for the difference. A great live learning experience." I think that's just fantastic. I think it's like, sure, why not? I mean, you've taught people how to do this. And the nice thing is when you take them when you do an Ono circle outside of your own environment, you have fewer blind spots, I think. One problem with even with the Ono circle is until you've done it long enough, you're blind to what's going on. I mean, you're so familiar with your own processes, perhaps, that you don't see things going on because they go right by you and you don't notice them because you're so used to them. Go somewhere else and do it, completely new environment, and you're going to spot things.
Well, it's like one of those paintings, one of those drawings that have the image behind
Right,
it.
right.
You have to let your eyes, you have to let your eyes go to a certain place, and then you can see it. It's very similar to that. It's also very similar to your first story, where you talked about the idea that the process of going back in time and finding solutions in medical environments. Trees is the same way. It's in both these stories where you learn from other examples. You bring it into what you're doing. It's very powerful to do it that way because it's going to be much more of a as you say, it's going to be much more relevant to you because you're not looking at what you already do. You're finding something else that's different from what you do, and you're learning more.
And where's the overlap?
Where's the overlap? Right. And I think the food court one is a good one too because like In-N-Out Burger. I think did he mention In-N-Out Burger in his story? Somebody did.
He may have mentioned In-N-Out, and also I think. Oh gosh, was it Mark Graban or somebody else mentioned In-N-Out?
Mark Graban mentioned In-N-Out in a story too that was very similar. That was more about error proofing.
That was error proofing, yeah.
But this idea that like In-N-Out, if you've ever gone to an In-N-Out Burger, right, most of you across the country can't because it's only here on the West Coast, I think.
Oh, you're missing out.
Yeah, but their process is really incredible.
Oh, geez,
their process is really amazing that they can do all that because they like cut their fries fresh to order and get. The whole thing you're rarely waiting there.
It's
more
fast
than a few
food, but
minutes.
it's high-end fast food, and it's really.
And the
it's
process
down, it's a science,
is,
man.
they have a lot of people working though.
That's one thing too, yeah.
They have a lot of people working. But you observe these things and you learn things that you can use in other ways. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool.
All right, well, we have a few minutes as we usually do. I'm going to go do our off script. So Dirk, I have one for you this time. I'm going to read it off for you here. Okay. Well, Laurel Tennis actually gave me this one. So Laurel, thank you for pointing this out to me. So yesterday, June 29th, 2017, was the 10th anniversary of the iPhone. I didn't realize the iPhone was introduced.
Really?
The iPhone was introduced on June 29th, 2007.
It's only 10 years old?
That's right. Wow. Here in the United States, it was the first iPhone was released yesterday, 10 years ago.
Okay.
Pretty cool. So I thought about that, and I did some reading on it too. So when Steve Jobs envisioned the iPhone, and he announced it a few months before that in January 2007, he talked about some things that the iPhone was going to be used for, obviously as a phone. Mobile connectivity was a big one that he thought. He said it'd be like a better iPod, which maybe not so much. But what he did talk about, and they didn't really consider much, was an application, the camera.
Oh.
It was a little wimpy 2 megapixel camera, It wasn't even anywhere close to a best-in-class camera for a smartphone at that time, right? But that has become the application that actually people use the most for their iPhone, right?
Yeah.
So it got me thinking. Video, It got me thinking about technology, especially technology as it's used in industry. So what do you see as some of maybe the off-label applications that maybe are going to be important in coming years? And that's not about the specifics of industrial applications and technologies, but more kind of in a general sense. And I'll give you an example that I thought of, and to maybe get you started. Like for instance, I think about simulation. Hexagon's new acquisition, MSC, I was just at the Hexagon show. They developed their simulation technology, their software, with NASA years ago in the 60s. Now they're using it to create these massive data sets for autonomous driving.
Oh, sure.
Because autonomous driving, there's so much that goes into an autonomous vehicle that needs to have the data and understand it. So they're using simulation software to run these simulations all the time to gather as much data, exabytes of data, so that they can then maybe get a handle on autonomous driving. So are there things that you look at, that you see that are being used in technology now, in industry now, that maybe could have other applications?
Well, I'm going the other direction. I keep thinking of virtual reality. And a lot of times, at least by my perception, the whole virtual reality and virtual reality goggles and all that really came, from what I can tell, really was kind of pushed to the forefront by gaming, right? Immersive gaming, and be able to put on headsets and really immerse yourself in a game and that sort of stuff. But we're seeing more and more where industrial applications where they're trying to use virtual reality. Now, I haven't seen it fully embraced yet. I've seen a lot of companies experiment with it. They'll try it. Matter of fact, I was just at a trade show not too long ago where they were trying virtual reality for working with a 3D model of an object. But I haven't seen anybody really pick up and run with it yet. I think it will. I think you're going to see that happen. I think they just haven't come up with the right way to use it yet. So a lot of, the most effective one I've seen of 3D, and I think we even talked about it at this show, is virtual reality for training. For training to somebody to do a physical job. So they put on their 3D goggles and they see this environment, and in this environment they see objects that kind of mimic what their real job might be, and they're trained how to manipulate these objects within this 3D environment, right, before they're put in a real environment. That so far is the most successful use I've seen of virtual reality 3D goggles so far. But I'm seeing more of it. And basically it comes down to interacting. The biggest use is interacting with CAD models. And being able to see this CAD model in front of you, move it, manipulate it, move around it, spread it apart, you know what I mean? But again, it's kind of a concept, and I haven't seen anybody really embrace it.
Well, and conceptually, I wanted to ask you too, and we don't have a lot more time, but I mean, quickly, you've worked in development of products in electronics and in technology, and I mean, so when you're developing a product, I mean, is there a sense of, well, we don't exactly know how this is going to be used. We have an idea for what we think the application is, but is there a sense that, again, I use the term off-label from like a pharmacological perspective, but I mean, is there a sense that we know it's going to be used in some other way? We don't know what that is yet. We've got to get it out to the users so they can kind of beta test it for us and figure out other applications for this thing?
Yeah. The one that immediately came to mind is I was in electronics right at the beginning of the personal computer revolution. Company I worked for, Commodore, I don't know if anybody even knows who Commodore is. At the time, they made a single board, a single PC board microcomputer that a hobbyist could program. We sold a buttload of. Now this was before the actual desktop personal computer came out. So, but these things we're selling to everybody, and some of it was a lot of it was hobbyists, but we had like Kenmore. Because they wanted to embed one of these in a dishwasher to make a smart dishwasher. Now, of course, this is like
in the 70s, right?
Yeah, this was in the 70s, right? But I mean, these things, we would get these things back for repair, and I'm looking at the companies they're coming in from, right? And there was a lot of just like, gee, what if we had a computer that we could embed in a product? What could we do with it? And they were all over the place. It was, but I mean, majority of it was hobbyists, but there was a lot of that. And I remember the Kenmore thing. It's like, yeah, we're making a dishwasher, and we think we can put one of these in a dishwasher. And I didn't even know what he was talking about. I'm going, what's it going to do in a dishwasher? Why would you want a computer in a dishwasher? That makes no sense at all.
Wow.
You guys are stupid.
That's really cool. Almost 40 years ago. Probably. Wow, that's incredible.
Pretty weird.
Good job, Dirk. Good job on the off script. Well, you'll get me next time, and I'll try to be as good as that. So.
All right. Oh, that is it for today's show. Thanks to Keith Bevan from the CMSC and the NPL in UK for joining us. 4th of July weekend.
That's right.
So you all have a great, 4th of July weekend. Some of you will be taking Monday off. Some of you won't. Have a good July 4th anyway on Tuesday. And hey, tomorrow is Canada Day for all our friends up north in Canada.
Enjoy that too.
150. Tomorrow is the 150th celebration of Canada Day.
Wow.
That was when Canada, there's been many celebrations in Canada, but this was actually when Canada, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick came together into what we think of as Canada Day.
1867.
1867, exactly.
Good job.
There you go.
Awesome.
150 years.
All right, thanks, Dirk.
All right, you guys have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
See you. Bye.
I think I know what happened with YouTube. I think I screwed something up this morning when I was setting it up.